What was it that got you into programming? I was thinking, what got me into programming? And what is programming really? What do I use programming for? You're watching Dev Tips, and I'm David. Okay, we're back in the yoga studio space. Spring is coming to Stockholm, and so are allergies. So... in the mid-90s, I was 12 or so. For some reason, I don't know why, my dad brought home a modem. I don't know why he brought that home, but I'm thankful to him that he did. This was just before the internet had taken off and become really mainstream. At this time, you still used BBSs, bulletin board systems. So it was this kind of server you connected to, and there was one client per one phone line. So these BBSs, they had really cool graphics, I thought. They had ANSI graphics. So even though this was when Windows was around, I really enjoyed the style of the ANSI graphics. It was like ASCII, but with color. I wanted to make my own graphic. I wanted to make my own BBS. This is what got me into programming. And I wanted to show off my graphics that I had done offline. I was using a program called The Draw. Some of you might remember it. And I think this deeper urge of showing off is human. Even though people are grown-ups, they are still like children trying to show off for their mom. Mom, hey, look at this thing I can do. So I don't know, it just seems like it's very human to want to show off your creative work. So my first programming, I think this was my first programming, was actually configuring a bulletin board system. I wanted to have a BBS to show off my graphics to other people, to the world. I think it was only one, I only had one user apart from myself, and it was my friend across, down the street. Because the BBSs used phone lines and my parents didn't want me to sort of hog up the phone line. I can sort of understand that. So setting up the BBS didn't actually involve any code. It was a lot of configuration though. But what is programming really? So I wasn't coding, I was configuring. But isn't that how all programming sort of starts? You take something and you adapt it. You sort of hack it. Perhaps you had a WordPress blog and then you started adding plugins. And then you wanted to modify the plugins because they weren't that great. So you went into the editor and then you sort of edited just a line of code to perhaps have it shown red instead of blue or something like that. That's when you go from the first step, the configuring, adding the WordPress plugin, to the next step of programming, which is sort of the coding, when you start to edit actual code. I think this is programming to me. You modify technology to create your vision. I wanted the world, or my friend down the street, to see my ANSI art. And to create that, I had to set up this BBS. I used a tool called Remote Access. It doesn't have to be code to be programming, in my opinion. Many things are done through configuration services. So if you're setting up Microsoft Internet Information Server, what is it called, IIS, most of that is done through a configuration UI. Whereas if you were to set up Apache or Nginx, perhaps you were writing sort of configuration files. They sort of more look like code, but it's sort of the same concept. You're modifying the technology to create your vision. I think this is sort of the programming mindset. So as soon as you're starting to make things that have a decision tree, if this, then do that. But if that, then do this. That is programming to me. And it doesn't matter if you're using configuration. Configuration is just like a high level programming language. It's higher than JavaScript, and JavaScript is perhaps higher than C++, and C++ is a higher level than assembly, which is higher than the binary registers down in the CPU. People put programming and programmers on a pedestal, and it's not that much different from what most people are doing where they're sort of adapting things. We shouldn't make programming feel complex and hard. And of course it can be hard and difficult, but I don't want to intimidate people from starting to program. If people just realize that editing Excel is programming. Excel is like a functional programming language. You're having a function which is then returning results for another function, which is returning results to a different function. They are programming when they're using Excel, not by writing macros, but when they're just using the average cell stuff. just equals something plus something. I think people think programming is too hard. It's not that hard. And programming is everywhere. What do I use programming for today? After the BBSs, I got online on the internet, and then I saw websites. So I wanted to make HTML. I learned CSS. And also there was something called Flash at that time. Do you remember that? A Macromedia Flash, which had a programming language called ActionScript, which is sort of like JavaScript. And then when I started working, I started as a front-end developer, and then I had to do back-end stuff like Visual Basic 6. It was awful. And then I found SQL, Standard Query Language, which was like a language to query things from databases. So even though my last job title was analyst, not developer, not programmer, nor coder, I was programming every day to solve problems. I was trying to get data out, I was trying to analyze data, or I was trying to track data. Everything involves some sort of programming. I see programming as a mindset on how to reach your vision, how to solve your problems. Today, the programming mindset is very useful because most of the things around us is sort of like based on software in some way, and that's when you really need programming and the programming mindset. That was it for today, but I'm sort of curious. What are you using programming for today? And what got you into programming? What was your BBS? What was your first thing that got you into actually using programming to solve your problem or reach your vision? Thanks for watching this non-coding programming episode of Dev Tips. I'm David, and I'm really looking forward to hear from your journey into programming. See you in the next episode. Bye.